Hello, it's Rebecca Logan here. Today I'd like to talk about 4 of my favorite nibs. These are not my absolute top favorite nibs, but they're 4 that are in my favorites. And the reason they're in my favorites is they are architect nibs. Architect is a type of grind you can get wherein the downstroke, the vertical stroke, is very thin, and the cross stroke, the horizontal stroke, is broader, the amount of broadness being determined by the original size of the nib. For example, I have a medium architect, a broad architect, and a double broad architect. So let's get started. In case you're wondering, this is a notebook covered by Lacao. They used to be in Taiwan, now they're in the United States. And this is the Bloody Mary leather with the brownie leather, and it holds 2 notebooks beautifully. So I'm going to switch from my Tomoe River book to my Cosmo Air Light book and work in that. Let's just make sure I can see this. It's in frame. Yes, it is. Get my trusty page protector. So the first one I showed you is the medium architect nib. This is a Lamy 2000. And right away you can see line variation that is interesting to look at. So this is a thin downstroke and a medium nibbed, probably a fine downstroke and a medium nibbed cross stroke. So you can see the line variation here. The ink, in case you're interested, is Diamine Steel Blue. And the angle this is ground at is 60 degrees. So the angle is important because when you write, if this is the page surface, if we're looking at the pen, I hold the pen at about 60 degrees, like that. I don't hold the pen, oh, I smeared my ink. I don't hold the pen at 45 degrees or at 90 degrees. I hold at about 60 degrees. So I smeared this all to heck, but 60 degrees is what this nib was ground to. Now this one was ground by Mark Bacas. He is the nib grinder. You can find him on the nibgrinder.com or nibgrinder.com. And he's the nib grinder on Instagram. And he did a great job. This nib grind cost $50 US. Or it would currently cost $50 US. I got it at a slightly lower rate because I had it done quite a few years ago. So that's my first architect grind. I wasn't sure I would like it. It was kind of a big risk to me at the time, sending away a $200 pen to get a nib ground. I was really unsure, but I love the resulting nib. It just is so interesting to write with. So the next one is a much more affordable entry if you're leery about whether or not you'll like an architect nib. This is an Osprey pen. I don't know if you can read that here on the nib, on the clip. It says Osprey. It's an Odyssey Milano. And again, it has those skinny downstrokes and much broader cross strokes. And this again was ground at 60 degrees. The ink is Urban Tropical Coral in French. This nib was an additional $13 US. So I bought the pen, paid for the pen, I think it was $70, and I could buy as many additional nibs as I wanted. They came with the whole nib unit, so the nib, the feed, and the collar that holds it all together, and just swap them in and out as you see fit. So I purchased a broad architect, this one, and a double broad architect. Now, it turns out the double broad architect was a little too much for me to handle in this pen, so I've just stuck with the broad architect. So this is a B. And this was ground by Osprey Pens. I don't know who at Osprey does their nibs. Should go back and put an M here. That's a medium. Next up, I have a BENU Talisman in the Mandrake colorway. When I got this pen, it had an absolutely delicious broad nib, and it did not need any work. It was gorgeous and a perfect writer right out of the box. Talisman by BENU. And it has the expected slimmer downstrokes and fatter cross strokes. It was ground at about 60 degrees, and it is broad. So even though it was an excellent nib, I just wanted something a little more fun, not just another really well-tuned broad nib. So I sent it away and had it tuned. First of all, this ink is by Van Diemen's. It is Black Tongue Spider Orchid. And it was ground by Jack Hernandez. He is somewhat local to me in that he is in Calgary. I am near Edmonton. Those are the two largest cities in the province of Alberta here in Canada. And I sent it away to him. It's about a 3.5, maybe a 3-hour drive away each way. But I mailed it off to him to get ground, and he did a fantastic job for $40 Canadian. You can find him on Instagram as Jack OKUN. That's how I found him. I had heard about him from other people's videos, specifically from Douglas Rathbone videos, but I found him by tracking him down on Instagram and sending him a message, and he responded right away with yes, he would be happy to grind some nibs for me. So my fourth Architect ground nib is in a KanWrite Heritage. This is an Indian pen. It's a piston filler. That's Emo. He is lonely. So this is a KanWrite. He wishes I were downstairs cuddling. Heritage. Skinny downstrokes, very broad cross strokes. This one was ground at 45 degrees, so this one's a little harder for me to get the full effect of the cross strokes. And this is a double broad. So this was another pen where I bought the pen and was able to buy an additional set of nibs to go with it. So the pen was under $36 US, and then a set of 3 nibs, a double broad regular, a double broad stub, and a double broad architect for $11.86 US for all 3 nibs. Whereas for the Odyssey Milano, it's $13 US per nib. But this is coming from India, so prices are a little lower there. Urban Lidite is the ink. And this was US $11.86. Now, I don't use the double broad regular or the double broad stub. It was just too rounded for me. But I do adore this Architect double broad nib. And this is just ground by KanWrite. I don't know who at KanWrite does their nib grinding, but they do a very nice job. Although the angle is low, it's lower than the other 2 pens. It is a lovely writer. So yeah, that's my 4. Oh, and they all fit in screen, in frame, so that's excellent. That is my 4 Architect nibs. You'll notice I print, I don't write. So an Architect nib is very good for people who primarily print. It really shows off the line variation very well if you print. It's called an Architect nib because it's for architectural drawings, and architects on architectural drawings do block printing, so all capitals printed. It is also known as a Hebrew nib, so good for the Hebrew alphabet. I don't know any Hebrew. I just use it for printing normally. It's my go-to favorite nib type. Second is followed by stubs and SIGs, and then regular pens. But I much prefer nibs that have been ground to have line variation. That's just my thing. So thank you for sticking with me, and I hope you have a great day. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I will get to them. Thank you. Bye-bye.